a civilian who thought they outranked you? I was a master sergeant at the time, 20 years in the army, when I took a civilian job at a defense contractor after retirement. First day on the job, this guy in his early 30s approaches me in the break room. "You must be the new hire," he says, not looking up from his phone. "I'm the project lead here. I run all military liaison operations." I introduce myself, mention my background, 20 years army, multiple deployments, specialized in logistics coordination. He finally looks up. "Oh, you're one of those military guys. Well, this is the private sector now. We do things differently here." "Sure, I understand that." "Good, because I've been managing military contracts for 5 years. I know how you people think." "You people." That was my first red flag. Over the next few weeks, this guy, let's call him Brad, kept treating me like I was some recent boot camp graduate who didn't understand the real world. During meetings with actual military personnel, Brad would introduce me as our former military consultant while positioning himself as the expert on military operations. The breaking point came during a joint planning session with officers from the local base. We're discussing logistics for a training exercise when Brad starts lecturing a lieutenant colonel about proper supply chain management. In my experience with military operations, Brad says, "You guys tend to overcomplicate these logistics issues." The lieutenant colonel, who has 30 years in and has managed supply lines in 3 different wars, just stares at him. "I've streamlined dozens of military operations," Brad continues. "The key is civilian sector efficiency." That's when I had to speak up. "Brad, what exactly is your military experience?" "Well, I don't have direct service experience, but I've been working with military contracts for 5 years. That's equivalent to about 15 years of actual service when you factor in private sector efficiency." The room went completely silent. This man genuinely believed his civilian job gave him more military knowledge than actual veterans. The lieutenant colonel leans forward. "Son, what did you say your rank equivalent was?" "Well, based on my responsibilities and salary range, I'd say I'm functioning at about an 05 level, maybe 06 inches. He thought he was equivalent to a lieutenant colonel or full colonel based on his paycheck. I couldn't help myself. "Brad, what's an 05? Blank stare. "You just claimed to be equivalent to an 05. What rank is that?" It's a high-ranking officer position." "What's it called?" More silence. The lieutenant colonel stands up. "Master Sergeant," he says to me, "would you mind explaining to your colleague what rank structure actually means?" For the next 10 minutes, I had to give Brad a basic lesson on military hierarchy while actual officers watched. Explained that 05 is lieutenant colonel, that you can't buy military rank with civilian salary, and that managing contracts isn't the same as commanding troops. Brad's face got redder with each explanation. "Well, in terms of practical impact and decision-making authority—" "Brad," the lieutenant colonel interrupted, "I've been in command positions longer than you've been out of college. Your job is important, but don't confuse writing contracts with military leadership." The meeting ended with Brad quietly taking notes while actual military personnel planned the exercise. Later, I found out Brad had been telling other contractors that he was basically a colonel based on his job responsibilities and salary level. He'd created this entire fantasy where civilian contractors existed in some parallel military hierarchy where paychecks determined rank. The funniest part? Brad made about $80,000 a year. Most lieutenants make more than that when you factor in benefits and allowances. His colonel-level salary was actually entry-level officer pay. After that meeting, Brad's attitude completely changed. He started asking me questions about military culture instead of lecturing me about it. Turned out he genuinely didn't understand that military rank represents years of training, leadership experience, and proven performance under pressure. He thought it was just a corporate hierarchy with different titles. "I didn't realize you couldn't just buy your way into military authority," he admitted later. Brad eventually became pretty good at his job once he stopped trying to be something he wasn't, started treating veterans as subject matter experts instead of subordinates. But every time I see a contractor wearing military-style gear and acting like they're special operations, I think about Brad claiming to be equivalent to a lieutenant colonel while making less than a second lieutenant. The civilian world has plenty of ways to measure success and authority. Military rank isn't one of them. Some things you can't buy, you can't